The NHL trade deadline is rapidly approaching, and there are rumors going both ways about Islanders who may be heading out and players who the Islanders may be interested in bringing in. We've got all the latest coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast.
Your Locked On Islanders, your daily podcast on the New York Islanders. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome, everybody, to the Thursday edition of the Locked On Islanders podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to thank everyone who makes Locked On Islanders your first listen every day. Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts so you can get new episodes as soon as they drop. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On for $20 off your first purchase. Lots to talk about as the NHL trade deadline rapidly approaches. But first, if there's something Islanders related on your mind, if you have a question, a comment, maybe a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, email us at lockedonislanders@gmail.com. And if you leave your first name and where you're from, we're happy to mention you on the show when we discuss whatever's on your mind. You can also follow the show on X at Locked On Isles. And you can follow me, Gil Martin, on X at Ice Wars, NYR VSNYI. We'll keep you up to date on all things Islanders all season long, and it is great to talk Islanders hockey with you, game time or anytime. I am also live tweeting during every Islanders home and road game, so join me for some instant insight and analysis. All right, let's get straight to it. The trade deadline right now is a week from Friday. It's 8 days away. And for the New York Islanders, will they be buyers? Will they be sellers? If they buy, they almost have to give away somebody in that equation in order to make cap space. So, yeah, there's that. But lots of questions about what Lou Lamoriello is going to do. And, a lot of it is going to depend. The Islanders right now have 4 games left before the trade deadline. And they are tonight in Detroit. You have March 2nd, Saturday, against Boston. March 5th, against the St. Louis Blues at home. And then the West Coast road trip starts where you're in San Jose. And then the next day after that is the actual trade deadline. And it is maybe going to depend on how the Islanders do in those games as to whether or not Lou Lamoriello is a buyer or a seller or, stays more or less put. But there are rumors out there. Now, as of right now, the Islanders are 7 points behind the Tampa Bay Lightning for the last playoff spot in the conference. Now, the Islanders do have 3 games in hand as of now on Tampa Bay. They're also 7 points behind the Flyers. The Islanders have a couple of games in hand on Philadelphia. But keep in mind that you have 3 teams in the standings in between. That's the Devils, Capitals, Penguins. All of them are ahead of the Islanders in the standings. Penguins even in points, but they have 2 games in hand on the Islanders. Caps 1 point up. Devils are 2 points up, but the Islanders have a game in hand. So it's tight, but you are 7 points out of a playoff spot, and you need to win all those games in hand on some of those teams if you're going to have a shot at making the playoffs. And they're really going to have to win, go on a nice streak and win a lot of their games. But one player whose name has come up, and it's a familiar name to Islander fans, and that is Vladimir Tarasenko. Now, the Islanders have scouted the Ottawa Senators for a couple of nights in a row. Islanders scout in the press box to see the Sens play. And one player who could be available is Vladimir Tarasenko. Here's a guy who, if you've been listening to this show long enough, has been talked about last year at the trade deadline as a possibility, as a free agent possibility. He has signed a one-year deal worth $5 million with Ottawa. So he is an unrestricted free agent at the end of this year. The Islanders would have, they need goal scoring. And Tarasenko's been a second-line guy for the Senators in 55 games so far, 15 goals, 38 points. He is 32 years old. And, I guess if he's had better years in the past. He scored 34 goals in 2021, 2022. 18 goals last year, splitting time between the Blues and the Rangers. And now he's on pace for about, let's say, 22, 23 goals this year, and maybe 52, 53 points. Is Vladimir Tarasenko an upgrade over what the Islanders would have on their second line now? Yes. If you break up the first line of Nelson, Barzal, and Horvat, he's probably a good spot even on the Islanders' top line. But again, at what cost? And he's 32 years old. We have heard Lou Lamoriello speak and basically say before the Stadium Series game, he doesn't like to do rentals. So if he's going to trade for Vladimir Tarasenko, it means a couple of things. Number one, it means that he would consider signing Vladimir Tarasenko to an extension. Please, no 7-year extensions for a 32-year-old forward. Please, Lou, no, please. He's playing on a 1-year deal now, so maybe he would take a 3-year deal. But even then, at what cost? It's got to be probably $3.5 to $4.5 million per year. And quite honestly, to clear up the $5 million in cap space, you either have to move Kyle Palmieri, whose statistics, by the way, are remarkably similar to Vladimir Tarasenko, so I don't think that would be a big upgrade. Or you move J.G. Pageau, in which case you break up the Nelson, Horvat, Barzal line and move Brock Nelson back to second-line center. But Tarasenko, again, yes, it's an upgrade, but if you're talking extension, do I trust Lou Lamoriello not to make it an excessive extension? No, honestly, I don't. And I kind of am concerned about Tarasenko's ability and willingness to back check at times. And that, again, you lock players in to long-term deals when they're past their prime. Right now, Tarasenko is a second-line guy and not a very high production kind of second-line guy, but average to slightly below average second-line guy with the potential, or at least the past performance that says he might be able to do more. Are his 35, 40 goal seasons behind him? Yeah, probably are. Don't think we're going to see that Vladimir Tarasenko anymore. Not reporting this because I think Vladimir Tarasenko is the answer. Now, if you give up Pageau for him, you're definitely upgrading the offense, but I am concerned that Lou Lamoriello would turn around and go to the extreme of extending him for a long period of time, which I just don't think makes a lot of sense for a 32-year-old forward who is going to be more than likely, declining even further in the future. And it just seems like a very Lou Lamoriello kind of a move, which is kind of why I'm afraid of it a little bit, perhaps. Not that, again, not that Tarasenko couldn't help, but it's got to be at the right price. And I'm not sure that it would be the right price with Lou Lamoriello calling the shots. All right, we have got a lot more to get to on today's show. We're going to talk about why J.G. Pageau's name always seems to come up when people are talking about trades. We'll talk about that. Plus, we will have our preview of tonight's game against the Red Wings, big game. And we will have our Islanders birthday of the day, a player who was with the Isles in the late 70s, but didn't stick around long enough to win a Stanley Cup with the team. He's a forward. Let's see if you can guess who that is. We've got all that and a whole lot more coming up on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. You shouldn't have to worry when you buy tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fast and easy way to buy tickets for all the sports, music, comedy, and theater events near you. With killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, and their best price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets. My favorite part of the Game Time experience, well, you go on the app, you can see the view from your seat before you buy, so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. And Game Time has deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, and even an hour after it starts. It is the place to find last-minute seats. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDON for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDON for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last-minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV and the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So, one player whose name is constantly coming up in trade talks is J.G. Pageau. And it seems, and this was true even during the offseason when there was, rumors that the Islanders would be interested in acquiring Alex DeBrincat. Who was supposed to go? Oliver Wahlstrom, J.G. Pageau. That was supposedly the deal. Senator said, thanks, but no thanks. And obviously, the fact that DeBrincat really wanted to play for his hometown team had an effect on that. But the reason that J.G. Pageau is a part of almost every trade rumor going the other way is that the Islanders have a glut of centers on their roster right now. You've got natural centers include Bo Horvat, Matthew Barzal, Brock Nelson, J.G. Pageau, Casey Cizikas, and Kyle McLean, who is on the roster as of right now. That's 6. Bo and Barzy are untouchable, and Brock is probably close to untouchable right now. The rumors that we heard earlier that the Islanders have received some calls inquiring about Brock Nelson, but I just can't imagine Lou Lamoriello trading him away. And again, the other aspect of it is this. If you're trying to improve your team's offense, trading away your top goal scorer, unless you're getting one heck of a haul, not going to do it. You can't trade Kyle McLean. He doesn't free up enough cap space to make that deal worthwhile. So, you're not going to free up enough space. So that leaves Pageau and that leaves Cizikas. The problem with trading Cizikas, again, you free up less cap space, and I think you get less value in return. A player like J.G. Pageau, while he is overpaid at $5 million a year, the problem is that you have other players, specifically Casey Cizikas, who can be a checking forward and step into that third line role. That's already what Zeke has done under this new lineup that the Patrick Waugh has put together. And amazingly enough, if you think about it, right now, J.G. Pageau has 7 goals on the season. Casey Cizikas, who has played 12 fewer games, has 6. J.G. Pageau has 22 points. Casey Cizikas has 13. Both of them kill penalties. Both of them are good checkers. Both of them are not speed demons, but have a nice burst. They're above average as far as speed goes. I'd give probably Pageau a little edge over Cizikas, but Zeke is certainly capable of playing the role. Both of them are good in the faceoff circle. The logical guy to trade away on this list, because he clears up $5 million in cap space, is J.G. Pageau. And while he is such a useful player and a likable player and a guy who does a lot of the little things right, because of the mess of a cap situation that the Islanders are in, where you have so many guys who are dealing with contracts that pay them too much money or give them too many years or both, and or even to add another or, they have modified or full no trade clauses. It is very difficult to bring in a player without giving up substantial amount of cap space too. So again, using the Vladimir Tarasenko deal, guess whose salary would match up cap-wise exactly with Vladimir Tarasenko's? J.G. Pageau. It would make sense. Now, again, another $5 million a year player, Kyle Palmieri. And we talked about the similarities between the stats of Palmieri and the stats of Tarasenko. Although Tarasenko is doing a little better in the assist department, but they're not far off. Well, think about it. If you're trading away a winger who scores a little for a winger who scores around the same amount, you're not improving your team. Not substantially. So it doesn't make sense to do that when you're hurting on the wing and you have a glut of centers. So for that reason, and I guess I'll add one more reason into the mix, and I think it's a very good and sort of overlooked reason. J.G. Pageau is the kind of role player that championship teams need. Go back, those of you who are old enough to remember, or who are familiar with the history, go back to the Stanley Cup winning Islanders teams. Who were the top 3 centers on those teams? Brian Trottier was the first line. Butch Goring was the second line. Who was the third line guy? The third line center was Wayne Merrick. Speedy. He had a 30-goal season earlier in his career, but by the time he got to the Islanders was more of a checking guy. And what the Butch Goring trade did was allow Merrick to move from the second line to the third line, and that kind of freed him up. It gave the Islanders depth at center and improved the overall team. If you're looking to fill in that last piece of the puzzle for a championship team, J.G. Pageau can be a fit. He will shut down or slow down an opposing team's best player and best line. He will take important faceoffs. He will kill penalties. And while he isn't producing a lot offensively, he's capable of filling in on a second unit power play. Although, again, more of a in a pinch rather than all the time, which is where he's at the Islanders. Yeah, he's a little overpaid, but not to the point where you go like, oh, yeah, he's not even close to worth what they're paying him. And as a rental or as a short-term kind of a situation, even though, Pageau still has another year left on his deal after this year, uh, he's the kind of guy, a winning team, you add him to the mix and it can help add intangibles and help get your team a little bit closer to over the top. So, oh, by the way, Pageau, 2 more years left after this year. He's a UFA in 2026, 2027, or before 2026, 2027. So that's why JG Pageau's name is often coming up in these trade discussions as someone who can be traded away. I love the guy. I hope he can stay an Islander, but if you want to make this team better and bring in someone younger and more skilled and help the offense, if you're going to trade someone, it makes a lot of sense for all the reasons I discussed to trade JG Pageau. All right, we have got more to get to on today's show. We're going to preview tonight's game, 7 o'clock Eastern time, Islanders, Red Wings, lots of playoff implications. And don't forget, you can hear every minute of this game with the Islanders' hometown broadcast on SiriusXM. Go to the SXM app and do a search for Islanders. We'll preview that game and have our Islanders' birthday of the day still to come on today's Locked On Islanders podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Sleeper. Islander fans, regardless of where we are in the current standings, I want to remind you, you can win big playing daily fantasy hockey on Sleeper, the official daily fantasy app of the Locked On NHL Network. Sleeper is our number one choice for daily fantasy sports and especially daily fantasy hockey, because with Sleeper, you can win 100 times your cash in daily fantasy hockey contests. All you have to do is pick whether studs like Barzal, McDavid, or McKinnon will record more or less than their sleeper projections for things like goals, assists, saves, plus, minus, and more in a given game. To win a 100 times bet on Sleeper, you need to correctly predict the outcome of 8 player stats. You heard me, Islander fans. You can win 100 times your money playing daily fantasy hockey with Sleeper. So use promo code LOCKEDONNHL. You'll get up to a $100 match on your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. That's code LOCKEDONNHL. See Sleeper's terms of use for details and locational availability. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's also available on Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV channels app. Locked On Sports Today is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with the local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows covering every league. Find Locked On Sports Today, now available on the free Fire TV channels app. So tonight, Islanders, Red Wings in Detroit as the Islanders close out their little mini road trip, and the Islanders are catching the Red Wings at a difficult time. They are red hot. They are on a pretty lengthy winning streak. And, you just look at what they've accomplished right now. 6 wins in a row. They are red hot, and you don't want to face a team like that at a time like this. Their last game, they scored 8 goals against the Washington Capitals, beat them 8-3. And, they just look like they are hitting on all cylinders. Now, Alex Lyon was the goalie in that game. He is now the starter, more or less, for the Red Wings. And here is a team that is putting pucks in the net. I mentioned the 8 goals. They're 5th in the league right now in goals scored, 19th in goals against, so kind of a little below average there. Special teams gives the Red Wings a big edge over the Islanders. They're 8th in the league on the power play, 9th on the penalty kill. Islanders have to stay out of the box. Some familiar names at the top of the scoring sheet for Detroit. Dylan Larkin, 53 points, 26 goals. That's the points are tied for first. The goals are first. Who's right behind him? Alex DeBrincat, 23 goals, also 53 points. And then Lucas Raymond has 34 assists to lead the team. He has 51 points. Those are the big three. We look at the line combinations that the Red Wings have put out. It's Dylan Larkin, Alex DeBrincat, and the newly signed Patrick Kane up front. JT Compher centers the second line with Michael Rasmussen and Lucas Raymond flanking him. On the third line from left to right, David Perron, Andrew Kopp, and Joe Veleno. And then the fourth line, Christian Fischer, centering Robbie Fabry and Daniel Sprong. On defense, Jake Wallman and Moritz Seider are the top pair. Ben Sherratt and Jeff Petrie, the second pairing. And then Ali Mata and Shane Gostisbehere are the third group. Alex Lyon and James Reimer are the goalies. Ville Husso still out. We'll see whether or not they go with Reimer or they stick with Lyon again, and he has been red hot. He is 18, 8, and 2 with a 2.69 goals against and a 9.14 save percentage. Reimer 6, 6, and 2, a 9.07 save percentage and a 2.91 goals against average. Islanders got to give a 60-minute effort, got to stay out of the box, especially with a team that is hitting on all cylinders, and there's got to be depth scoring. That is the other thing the Islanders need to improve upon, and if Patrick Roy decides to keep that top line of the three Bs, as I'm calling them, but it's Bo, Brock, and Barzy, if you're going to keep them together, you're going to need other lines to step in and produce. So let's see whether or not the Islanders can get some of that secondary scoring. One other thing that it's vital to look at, the Red Wings right now are second in the league as a team in shooting percentage, 12.3 percent, which means they're probably getting a lot of high quality scoring chances. Islanders can't let them have that. Got to keep them on the perimeter if you're going to have a chance at winning the hockey game. Let's see if the defense is equal to the task. Time now for our Islanders birthday of the day, and we're a couple of days late on this one. But Tuesday was the 68th birthday of former Islanders forward Mike Kazicki, the native of Milton, Ontario, only 5'9", $185, second-round pick of the Isles back in 1976, also selected by the then New England Whalers of the WHA. Made his Islanders debut in 77-78, scored 13 goals, 42 points in 58 games that year. The following season, 16 goals, 34 points in 71 games, and then he was traded midway through the 79-80 season to the Washington Capitals in the deal that got the Islanders Gordie Lane, was quickly dealt to the Toronto Maple Leafs, and then was out of the NHL after the 82-83 season. Only played in 226 career NHL games, 42 goals, 122 points, 108 penalty minutes, add 2 goals, 8 points in 19 playoff games, 17 of those coming with the New York Islanders, and basically all of the points. One of his better games as an Islander, we take you back to April 8th, 1978 at the Nassau Coliseum. Islanders, Rangers, going toe-to-toe. Wayne Thomas, the goalie for the Rangers. Chico Resch in between the pipes for the Islanders. And in this game, Mike Kazicki opens the scoring for the Islanders. Nystrom and Stefan Pearson with the assist, just 4 minutes, 18 seconds into the game. Late in the first period, he assists on a goal by Bobby Nystrom that was his 30th of the year. Jerry Hart, the other assist. That gave the Islanders an early 5-0 lead. And then late in the second period, Kazicki scores again, this time on the power play. Stefan Pearson and Bob Nystrom again with the assist. That made it 7-0 Islanders. They won it by a score of 7-2, 26 saves for Chico Resch, but for Mike Kazicki, 2 goals, an assist. He was a +3. He had 2 penalty minutes, and he had 4 shots on goal in this game. So Mike Kazicki, kind of a forgotten player from the Islanders in the late 70s. He is our Islanders birthday of the day. Thanks again for making Locked On Islanders your first listen every day, everydayers. Tomorrow on the show, we will have our key takeaways from this game against the Red Wings. Plus, we will preview Saturday night's game against the Boston Bruins as the Islanders return home for 2 games. We'll have all that and any other trade rumors, injury updates, or Islanders notes, news notes, and happenings. Until then, stay safe, everybody. Have a great day. And of course, let's go Islanders.